Lepo pozdravljeni in dober večer.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's wonderful evening in the coffee shop of museum. We will be talking about the habits of the modern society, and as part of this project, we've prepared a talk with an expert, as we call them. This discussion today is also being recorded and transferred to the digital platform of the project, where it's available in the Slovenian and in the English language. And now I would like to invite my colleague Ana Salvador from the House of European History in Brussels to give us a few words about this project. Ana, you have the floor.
For speaking in English. I'm here today on behalf of the House of European History. So, first of all, you are warmly invited to visit our museum in Brussels if you visit Belgium in the next months. We also have an exhibition about waste, and this is why we were so lucky to cooperate with your museum, the Museum of Recent History in Celje, during the last 2 years and a half. We were 10 museums cooperating around the topic of waste, and is also in the framework of this partnership that a series of talks with different experts took place recently, 3 of them, and this one today is the last one, but all of them will stay online. The recording will be available to rewatch, so we hope that much more people can learn from these conferences, and this is why also we are being recorded and live streamed on YouTube, and this will allow me, in my case, to follow the conference in English online. I wish you all a good conference. Thank you, Urša, for everything, and thank you to the museum for the welcoming today.
Hvala, Ana. Sedaj, če smo rekli, da je to pogovor
Thank you very much, Anna. And we said that today we will be talking with an expert, and Urša Zgojznik is our expert today. A fighter against waste since years already, and I think for years to come. You probably know Urša from the past actions, Clean Up Slovenia, of which she was the initiator. She was a long-year president of Ecologists Without Borders, and otherwise she deals with very current topics, fighting against waste, how to not produce the waste, what to do with waste, and how to put into practice a better future for people. Urša, you have the floor. Thank you very much for your invitation. Thank you very much for the introductory words as well. I have to say that this is a very common practice in environmental questions, that we don't have many people participating in such events. Unfortunately, I have to say, perhaps there is certain apathy from the side of the government, and sometimes such conferences are too demanding for the public as well. I tend to see familiar faces, and it's in a way an echo chamber. We see people, we invite them to different events, but this is still a very important process so that we are able to meet you. Just a short introduction to today's event. So I remembered the moment when I was on the Sankar stage during my TEDx speech, and I think it's very worthwhile to give so that the museum gives us space to talk about such issues. It may seem that we don't create an echo. We do. I believe we do that, and this is simply the result of my experience in the last 14 years. You have given me a title, and I will try to dissect each and every word of the title that you gave me. And I believe that it's very good to shed a light through a personal story, so that we don't just talk about it in general, or too focused on certain bureaucratic things or laws, plans, and so on, and we stray further away from people. I don't feel special at all, I have to say. I know that I was always very sensitive on the topic of environment, society, and so on. Probably I was president of my class, my entire primary school, and for that reason, probably. And when these blogs started, I wrote a blog about it. I was very proud of that fact. Seoul once published my blog on the first site once, and this was one of the key media back then. This is now 16 years ago, and you find your way of expressing yourself. Uh, my education is a professor of mathematics and pedagogics. Uh, Sometimes I was focusing on one thing, sometimes on the other thing. Sometimes I didn't feel very well because of that, but it allowed me to see how important it is to merge different areas, how to ensure that we link certain humanistic, uh, environmental topics. And this is where I was able to find a solution. And this is a place where I feel very well. I used to work for a transport company, and I was quite shocked by the organized action Let's Clean Slovenia in one day. This was a crazy idea in the year 2009, and it came from Estonia, where they decided in a basically random way and decided to clean Estonia from wild landfills. And this was a Slovenian copy of this idea, but it was basically just a copy. And in the case was similar in Slovenia. But why am I telling you this? Because we are often referring to a group of people which suggests something and pushes it forward. But when I participated in the first meeting, we had people there from all around of Slovenia, various ages, and we tackled this process. You probably know the actions, the events. There was truly a breakthrough event of our time. Even today, this is the largest volunteer event that joins 13% of the Slovenian population, and this is more than 260,000 Slovenes. They all Slovenian municipalities partake in this event as well. Perhaps this seems very far away to collect waste, but we used to do a lot back then, and the wild landfills were an issue. We had washing machines thrown away in the forest, but also to give you an international context, more than 180 countries are now participating, and these are certainly not nonsensible projects in Africa or in Asia, where they are still facing a lot of waste. And this is often the only political question that joins people in a very risky action. I remember the stories that I heard from people. We have war, and then you all have a group of people that have decided to do a cleanup action. So this is not negligible, and this project also uh, empowered other environmental projects. If you remember the project Symbiosis, that was basically copied on the organizational foundations of that action. Well, this happened in 2010. Then we performed this event in 2012 as well. It was much better organized. And the third event in the year 2018, when all countries that participated in the cleanups decided to do it on one common day. This was our dream, and then we found a date in the year 2018, and we decided to join with a very powerful warning. But it shouldn't be our action that we will clean up after someone else, and to present it at a higher, but we wanted to present it at a higher systemic level. Otherwise, this could be a Sisyphus endeavor. And I am again emphasizing that we shouldn't only focus on performing such actions. It can be a team building exercise, but we don't have time or place for that anymore. But after the first event, people who remained did not uh, stop working on that because it was a very large sacrifice. There was a lot of burnouts as well. 8 months was the duration of the organization. It was a lot of work, but we said that we should continue. We haven't resolved the issue of waste in Slovenia, and we should start thinking what we can do. Who are the first uh, type of waste? What can we do in that regard? So the Ecologists Without Borders Association was founded back then. We got professionalized now, and we have 4 pillars, and we also deal with other activities. But the activation is our main focus. We have a lot of organization. We have a lot of events. I have to be honest. I've become very against certain projects because of certain projects because we simply find money and try to do a tick for like and say that we've done the project, but to get people on board, it's not easy. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to convince people that something is important, and let alone to convince them that they will do something. And this requires a lot of activity, a lot of actions. And one of the first things that we tackled was textile in the year 2010. We haven't started talking about the fact that textile and clothing waste, that it is an issue, but we did start to think about that topic. We focused on reuse. We noticed a lot of stereotypes. Within one project, we set up the bins where you could leave your textiles. There were very good practices in the past. We probably all know you can give your clothing to someone else. We perhaps paid a bit more attention to our clothing, perhaps purchased more quality clothing and so on. And this was a practice that was very close to my heart. We were also talking about plastics, that it is an issue, but today is a number one topic. It is also being put into the legislation. Regarding food waste, there was no statistics back then on how much food we throw away. There were certain estimations on the EU level, but today this is an important topic as well. We have an action plan adopted in Slovenia now on how to tackle this issue. This is a very complex topic. I will talk about it a bit later on. So this is my image that I always want to show because it says a lot that something is wrong in this world. This is not the only issue, but if we are talking about waste, this image tells me a lot, and it will tell you a lot as well. If I tell you that this was an image from the Maldives, we often see the images from with the blue ocean and so on, but we have a lot of waste in Maldives as well. I someone in a pupil in primary school said, "Well, look, they have a chair like we have, like the one that we have at home." This does not mean that the population of Maldives are wasteful, but waste is a merchandise nowadays, and where do they end up? This was a very good question of your exhibition. We know very well where they end up. Perhaps you are unable to show the dot at the end, but if we throw something away into the bin, we cannot think that we have completed our job. This I can continue with Mount Everest. We have a lot of research being conducted now. If you read media, we see a lot of new information coming out every week. So plastics at the top of the world, absolutely there is present. It's a very popular spot. Waste is being collected there. We have plastics at the lowest point in the Mariana Trench. Minus 12,000 meters below the ocean, they found a piece of plastic, of a plastic bag. We have plastics everywhere, and the our if we think that we will recycle everything, this is absolutely not true. Only 9% of all plastics ever made has been recycled, and everything has to end up somewhere and is not being put back into the circle, into the cycle. Plastics is in our blood, it's in the mother's milk, it's is basically everywhere. We find plastics everywhere. Is it an issue or not? This is still being discussed. I took part in a round table when they were discussing the fact that it's an issue, but the chemist said it's not an issue, it's an organic matter. But thankfully, we heard from a doctor as well who said it's an artificial material that causes certain issues in the body, that has other materials that fuse with the microplastic. We also had an analysis that showed a trend of the use of plastic, which is of course increasing, and we also all noticed the trend of infertility in people. So we were able to see parallel graphs, and we of course they require additional research. Food waste. Perhaps I can go back to the previous slide. It's a very difficult topic. If we've been dealing with it for the last 10 years, governmental institutions, EU, we've been thinking about it a lot, but there have been no serious effects. The trends are not declining. We cannot say that we know some certain things that we are doing on it and the food waste is being reduced. This is not true. This is not happening, and we should certainly think which part of the society or where food waste is being created. Where do you think that the largest amount of food waste is created? Is it prisons, restaurants, companies, stores? It's actually households. So each and every person that throws something away, so we have simple mathematics: a little times a lot is a lot. So we have food services, industry, they take care of their expenses, how to maintain their company and so on, and every waste is an expense as well, and they also often think about how to resolve such issues. But it's the most difficult to talk to the society, to the consumer, what to do in the consumer world, so that a yogurt or a rotten banana is not thrown away, or that they see this action as an issue. It is an environmental issue. So, roughly speaking, any measurements that we conduct in the developed world, in the less developed world, in the municipality, in the company, we throw away a third of produced food. A third of what we invested in the production was thrown away. Use of food, use of soil, energy, seeds, and so on. So this is an issue from the field of carbon footprint. If we calculate it, it's very high. It's a financial issue because we are literally throwing money away. You throw it away at home, well, you have to sometimes have to throw the food away, but we often have to try to prevent that. But as a society, we're throwing money away. Each food waste has to be placed into a box. For example, the company Bioterra deal with these boxes, and this costs money. On the level of public institutions, this is brings about a high bill. We did calculations in hospitals, uh, elder homes, and so on, and the sums are incredible without even including the labor costs and so on. And then we are talking about free lunches and so on. And it's also a social problem. Unequal distribution of food, it's very complex issue. So we are dealing with the topic, but we still haven't found a magical solution. So this is an explanation. But sometimes we buy some things just in case. What if someone else comes to dinner, buy another loaf of bread, and then it goes bad? But this is added up. If each citizen of Slovenia threw away 200 grams of tomatoes, for example, or something else, we can sum it up to more than 400 tons of food. So there is a certain influence. Textile, I've mentioned it before as well.
Now here, this is the second or third most problematic industry worldwide. But what I find interesting is there's no recycling with textile. We cannot think that something will be recycled. It will not be. Recycling textile is so complex and so expensive, and there was tries of getting the thread back into recycle, but you have to take into account there's mixes or compounds of 2, 3 different thread types. What is sensible is reuse. And oftentimes, textiles are lower quality than a few decades ago. Through wear, tear, and washing, the reuse is not as viable as it was. Some 3 years ago, Greenpeace has shown heaps of textiles in deserts, and then they put some sand on them. This is the Ural Lake, a symptomatic story. If you see the border, the Ural Lake border from 1960, so the shoreline is filled in, but because of irrigation of cotton fields, it has practically dried up. It is a dry, arid zone that is salty, and people have had to move out. So the question is, which textile is okay if cotton is not? We've said plastics are not okay. The only viable answer is less pieces. Buy less, buy sustainable. And there is, for example, different sustainable materials available. We have heard rumors that rivers are painted in a color that becomes in vogue. There's also no solution for this. We have to speak to consumers to see what we can do as individuals. If 5 people make a change, this can go on as a domino, as a chain reaction. I have chosen those 3 topics. There are many more, but this has spoken to me. We have started solving these problems as ecologists. This was either the first or the second working meeting. We said we will not only be criticizing, we have to have a momentum as an NGO to be against the government. Yes, we have to be critical, but who will be spurring the society on if not the NGO sector? So an individual is weak in comparison to the local community or government. So that was our goal. Let's find solutions. We have worked on waste because at the time it looked like a topic not covered by anyone else. And this is pretty much our core business now. Here we have 5 postulates. In the past, we had 3R, 4R, and now 5R. There's also the organic cycle of composting. And we have to keep on speaking about less about reducing and refusing. For the main economic logic for more production, of course, this goes opposite to it. But there have to be small and solutions in the community. We have one of the founding members of the Zero Waste Europe network, which is one of the main actors on the European level when it comes to reforming legislation. So we have added a lot of things to zero waste. We have Slovenian communities that now have an integrative approach for waste. and they're giving us new momentum for communities. We also have personal projects or personal approaches for zero waste, because there is a strong community of zero waste people in Slovenia. So this is really, as the name says, it's zero waste. There is nothing in terms of waste that they do. And this is a really important guiding principle. Then we also have tourism, because the waste production there is quite high. The strategy for the community of Bled in Slovenia produced the first graph about waste produced. And we were just asking, how did you not know that in the summer months there's 3 times more waste, and somebody has to pay for this? Do tourists pay waste management? Of course not. So this is one of the approaches where we can tackle the problems. Here we see the Zero Waste Europe network, at least one organization per country. And we have about 500 local communities in the network who undertake advanced steps concerning zero waste. So zero waste does mean zero waste. But in the International Zero Waste Alliance, we are not trying to really reach zero waste on a governmental level. So we are doing steps towards zero waste. And each and every measure undertaken is important. Another thing we have done are practical surveys. So when it comes to plastics, we have done a study. We hear a lot of rumors. There are heaps of waste where we actually didn't know a few years ago where the problem is. Is it utility companies? Is it the households? Where do we have the problem that so much waste is being produced? And we did a research, an anonymous one, where we found out quite a lot of things. A certain director of a company, when they had to speak non-anonymously, they couldn't speak as freely. So that is why we chose an anonymous format. We have also done an analysis. If we have different types of plastics, they are not equally problematic. Some are easier to recycle, some are practically impossible. And then we ask ourselves, which types of plastic do we have and which can we recycle? So we had a basic lineup of goods with their packaging. And then we could take up contact with producers, with resellers, in order to do some change. We also set up a webpage called Less is More, which is for reuse. We have the Slovenian map, and everybody can put in where we have people fixing things, appliances, where we have reuse centers, and so on and so forth. So this is a page for exchange events, which are quite popular right now again. I think at the beginning of the year, my nephew brought home a clothes exchange program. It was a rural area that is not quite a front runner in general when it comes to ecology. And I could reread words of my first project in 2012. So you do see that it takes quite a lot of time for such a simple idea to penetrate all the way through. So zero waste tourism, it goes both ways. One are accommodations, so hotels, rooms, apartments, where on the European level, there is a certificate now. It is not easy to gain because you know that those green certificates for tourism are quite popular. But it is well known that some can be acquired quite fast, but for others, there has to be a lot of investment. When it comes to events, those have no strategy and they are quite problematic. They set up containers and everything will just end up in there. So zero waste tourism is really something that does encompass this. In the southeast of Slovenia, we have done an event where we found the waste and we tried to bring together. And in the end, they found that everybody had to bring it together and it was incinerated. So this is actual practice in some areas. So it's not really to be taken into account that everything will be separated. Yeah, so this is a trend that is quite well known in different cities and regions. One thing we've also started doing is quite of a gray zone for NGOs. So we're trying to be apolitical, but we cannot be non-political if we're trying to have responsible projects. We do not sign up for the left or right wing, but we are trying to lobby for people. So we are slightly political, but we would not want to be connected with companies because there's capital, which can be problematic. But with this, we actually close different fronts. We want to be the leaders of change. So this might be a differentiating factor between us and other organizations. And there are forms of cooperation. It's not the point that they pay us for speaking there. This is where we draw a line. But when it comes to awareness raising, so we have the top 3 topics on our presentation, and companies are interested in team buildings for when it comes to zero food waste and zero textile waste, and zero waste hunt as well is really popular. At a conference at the municipality, it was spoken today how the economy can be the driver of the green transition. There are many examples for sustainable managers, so a person whose task is to prepare the strategy and they set very high goals, but employees in the company are absolutely not aware of this. When change will happen, every employee should be aware of this. They should know about this, and there are other approaches to have this. Now coming to the 21st century, this is quite popular right now. You probably have heard the speech of Lučka Kajfeč-Bogataj. I think she has quite a good idea of what the planetary boundaries are, and that is why I cite her. I haven't seen this anywhere else. She has the graphical materials to show what the industrial age was like, and further areas as well. The picture is about a month old, and the Stockholm Resilience Center has set up the boundaries when it comes to land use, biochemical processes, ocean pollution, biosphere, and so on and so forth. And a long time, it was not possible to find borders and quantify when it's being crossed. And now all the boundaries have been defined, have been measured, and it is even more brutal now.
You can see the entity at the top. It was the first time that microplastics, pesticides, nuclear waste, GMOs have been defined. And also here you can see the limit of boundaries, which turned into the entered the red zone immediately. And I thought the images was very important because we are entering a new age when we have to talk about it. Are there climate changes? Is it an actual event? Was it caused by people or not? Because we clearly are at that point. But look at the image. Let's remove the aspect of climate change, but look at how much remains. Look at how many things that we have to address, and we have issues in many things. Even when we are still in the green, so to say, we are nearing the edge as well, the boundaries. So I don't have many positive things to say, but despite everything, I believe that this shouldn't stop us. It should instead motivate us to find new solutions, to activate ourselves, to change things. This is an additional way of measuring. So this is the Slovenian Eco Debt Day, which is not a simple calculation. It includes the CO2 emissions, use of soil, use of forests, and many other things as well. But what is it about? If we take the world as a whole, or an individual country, and we said give it a certain amount of resources that it requires for a year, but it doesn't use it equally the entire year, we can use it before the year ends, and then we ask ourselves, how do we live the rest of the year? It's basically a credit. You received your salary on the 10th, you spent all your money on the 20th, and how will you survive until the next month when you receive the next paycheck? And this is how we got into debt on the level of the environment, and uh, on the shoulders of future generation. On the 18th of April, we have the Slovenian Eco Debt Day. So if the Slovenian Eco Debt Day is transformed into different numbers, we have old information. We have more than 2 planets now because we are in the first half of the year. In the first quarter of the year, if we use everything in the first quarter, we use up 4 planets. Do we have these many planets? This is a very basic calculation. We don't. It's very interesting to speak about this to children because they clearly tell you we don't have this many planets, but all calculations show that we as the human race, a very consumerism oriented human race, are not aware of this fact, and we will have to make a decision who, when, and how will do so will still be discussed, but we are moving towards an image of 2 planets. Or will we face the reality and say that no, we have one planet? It's a very strange thing to talk about, but I think it's always very important to emphasize that we're not trying to save the planet. The planet will save itself. There are many processes that we don't even know. The Earth will spit us out or do whatever it will. This is not the point of it. This exceeds the limitations of our mind. We are actually talking about whether we are doing or going to do something for the people so that we can live on the planet and so that our next generations can live on the planet. So we're moving towards the social part, the human part of the my presentation. And the fact is that disasters work better together when they start happening. One disaster, the health issue, has already passed, and this is the image from back then. And I thought it was very important. It was often said that I cannot wait that we remove to so that things go back to normal. But when we talk about the environmental crisis, it's similar. We are hoping that we will stop dealing with the environment, that things will go back to normal, that will go back to consumerism. But this is a wrong way of thinking. We cannot go back to normal, so to say, but we should think about uh, finding a way forward. This aspect as well. We are in warm times. I don't know how this how you feel about that, but I think it's a very difficult issue. This is not just a question of a country deciding to attack another one. There are things that are linked with these topics as well, with the environment and so on, energy, capital, and so on. So this is all interlinked. Luchka Kaifish explained the story in Syria, why it happened in Syria, because it wasn't very clear back then. Syria created a national strategic program so that they will achieve 100% self subsistence. But this was a time of drought that lasted 2 years. They've invested everything in that. Became very vulnerable as a nation, indebted and attractive to different projects, different stories, and this is then we had weapon businesses and different things, and war started. And this idea of giving peace a chance is very important as well. So ego echo, we will have to rethink this concept again. I would like to show you this image so that all crises related to the environment, nature, will be resolved by ecologists, environmentalists in this part of the society. Is that possible? It's not. We have created this issue for a very long time, and it's very difficult to resolve it today. And we also have to take our burden, our share, and all the work that is being done by various organizations in the world. And then we ask ourselves, who is the one who is supposed to do something? Is it the government? Is it the economy? Is it individuals? Is it the companies? And we are, and the research shows that a third should do something. We can all do something. I will give you a concrete example as well. We were joking at a hotel a while ago. It was in Bohin. We had a bottle of water, and we said in Bohin we will drink bottled water. And I went to the reception desk and I said, I'm just giving it back. Someone else went on the second day, and so on and so on. And a change occurred, and they were wondering what are these people doing. And of course we told them, in Bohin we have drinkable potable water. You don't need the bottles, you don't need the plastic bottles. You should tell people that we have potable water in Slovenia. So it is possible to work at this level. Remember the tomatoes that we mentioned beforehand. Industry, economy are doing their part because of the efficiency in regards to costs, but they are not doing it quickly enough. That is true. Government and management also have to take their own share, and this is where things can occur very quickly. This is a research conducted by the Eurobarometer, where Slovenes believe that the state holds the largest responsibility for the climate changes. At the end, I believe that raising awareness is the most important, because only this way is it possible to change the way people think. And another thought for the end, we always think that someone else will do something. But for me to conclude this story, I often think that I cannot look at things that are wrong, and I always try to contribute, I try to do something, from non-governmental organization to various cleanups. But at a certain point, I also decided to tackle politics. I still think it's a bit funny because people tell me you are insane. It's difficult to change things. Politics are bought and sold. But if it's possible to create one article that is better in the legislation, it's an opportunity that I had to tackle. That and this was. Uh, these are images from the previous elections. I am the president of the Green Party, Besna, and to step away from the political sphere is also a wrong approach. Why is it wrong? These are the election results last year in Poland. On Sunday, Slovenians are not very interested often on what is happening on the European level, but Poland was in a serious crisis, a crisis of values. We were talking about the basic fundamental human rights, rule of law, information flow, disinformation, and so on. So if you know a poll, you can ask them. It was not simple to find a correct way forward, but there was a change that occurred. There was something new in the society, and look at the results that they achieved. The participation in the election close to 75%, and the main party, uh, PIS, was had the coalition, but it doesn't have the majority anymore, and they will not be able to lead the country anymore because of the smaller parties, because they activated themselves. They've also achieved a record because young people and women uh, participated in the elections at a record level, and we have to be aware of that. We have things in our hands. Just another inspiration, small inspiration, and then I will conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'm certain we have a question. Thank you very much, Urša. And it's time for you to think about your questions, but we have a question from our joint platform. Which examples of innovations do you know in the field of textiles? And what are our practical solutions? Not just what individuals can do, but also what is being done in the industry of textiles. An excellent question. Innovation can also be segmented individual, company, state, and at state level as well. A lot of things are happening at all levels. I was very happy to hear the new directive on the level of Europe on the prevention of sparklers. We are especially referring to microplastics, but I hate the little sparkles. I have a daughter, rhinestones, and sometimes it's impossible to buy clothing without rhinestones. And we often ask ourselves, what is that anyway? It's plastic. Where does it end up? In the washing machine, and then it moves forward. So we are talking about particles up to 5 millimeters. It cannot be filtered by filters. It moves forward to oceans, to rivers, and so on. And this is, my daughter doesn't like glitter, and this is what I'm talking about. This is an important part that we have to address, and it should be addressed by the legislation, and it should be moved forward. In regards to companies, I think there's a lot of green. We have sustainable fashion. Give us back our clothing, and we will give you a 5% discount. There's a lot of greenwashing by large companies, but what is positive is the use of organic materials. Cotton, for example, changes a lot, but it's still not enough. We live in a consumer society. We buy t-shirts for €3. We buy special deals without being aware of the fact that these are things that are left in our drawers being untouched. And I'm not really counting on the industry because they're being run by a different mechanism. In regards to individuals, we sometimes see the containers that are set up in my region. I know that when we fill up the beans, We often say that we don't know where to put them. Well, that means that we did see something, we did notice something, but until we actually start to purchase less, we start to purchase more sustainable materials and help local manufacturers, it will be very difficult to turn the trend around. Things are happening, but at the end, I think it will be the level of legislation which will have to stop certain things from happening.
This goes for other areas you've mentioned as well. Any questions and comments from the audience? Thank you very much. Good evening. My best for your activism in this presentation. So your relationship to the principle of small steps, what we as individuals can do, and politics and governments on the other hand. I have an anecdote, quite personal. I have always drank bottled mineral water. So I originated from an area where this is a regional identity thing, and I found that my favorite mineral water is not available in a glass bottle anymore. It might not be an ecological thing, but it's more of a revolt because they're destroying my last remnant of childhood. So I did not want to take up the plastic bottle. When this happened, 5 or 6 other people did that. So there was a revolt in a certain generation. So 5 or 6 people who I know about, and there should be more. And there was no influence on those decision makers. So their profits were high enough so that they just simply didn't care that they lost a certain percentage of their consumers. I am quite skeptical that the different industries in this neoliberal economic mindset try to grab or take up this idea. And that is why I think that the role of politics is that they have to pass systematic legislation. So that is why I definitely appreciate your political engagement. There are a few people like yourself with a certain integrated distance when it comes to decisions, and that is why I appreciate it that much more. I hope your political engagement is fruitful and successful, and that political success does not change your approach. I don't know if this is more of a question or a comment, but I will be happy to listen to more of your ideas. Thank you for your comment. I long for more talk on this topic. People tend to laugh at me and say that there's not much that can be changed, but I think that we have to question everything to find better ways of doing things for nature. And as soon as we stop questioning things, we as humans just stop moving. That is why you have to open up debates. Why in our world, for example, in Slovenia, our political turnout is 45%. So that means we have 55% of people who do not want to take part in this. So how will we tackle other problems in the community? I don't know. I have a personal boundary until when I do engage with this, but if it will not work for me, I will admit it myself. Maybe I'm not the right person for this. I think this apathy and lack of engagement is really a thing of pity. And that is why I long for people to take action, to make steps to change something, it's not only up to me. And I believe there will not be change by politics because my values are too different. Maybe this will just mean me being less home, but I take this anytime if this means change. So I think this is a good thing. But your mineral water was the company's Donut versus Radenska and Temple, of course. We did laugh at this because there was a lot of outreach that Donut was not available in a glass bottle anymore. And there's a kind of a cold war between our ministry and companies managing waste. It's become ugly, and I follow this closely. However, I agree, we need decisive politics that dictates how this is going to be. I understand that companies have their ideas because glass means less transport cost, washing cost, but in other areas we have different developments. Thank God we have European legislation, which will bring us to a system where we have to pay a little bit for glass bottle. I flew to Brussels and Madrid. People did ask me if I took the train, but from Slovenia, that would mean a whole week, and that is why I chose an airplane. So the small water bottles, they cannot be returned. So they're one-way plastics, and that is small. And in this framework, we time and again think that we're too small. Then what? Like, let us expand the market if this is the problem. And I think we will need decisive measures. And I hope that our politics will manage this, hopefully. Well, I have an opinion and a question. So, waste are raw material as well. And I think this is the main question of economic and waste management policy. Talking about plastics or food waste percentage or waste of textiles, this is all being collected separately in Slovenia. But here the question, how many segments can we bring in separately and what can we do with it? I think this is a time where we in Slovenia see that raw materials are not sufficient, that the European Union is seeing that we are missing essential raw materials. And the question, again, what will we do in Slovenia in order to turn collected waste into new materials? So I see a potential of a circular waste economy where you, Urša, as an ecologist without borders, are active. I have read a quite interesting information undertaken by the organization Umanotera, who have criticized that we know that what the problems are, but we're not acting. I think the time has come to have all Slovenian activist initiatives to be more decisive, to have people at your events who are decision makers when it comes to technological waste management. We have the organization Cinkarna in Celje, which is making quite interesting things. And I think we should be active at the national level in different events where you actually are repeating the one thing, and we're pretty much just circling around the same thing. Let us make a step forward. Which Slovenian companies can work with their own waste? What are we doing with the collected waste? And as you mentioned, food waste, what is happened to composting plants, to biogas plants? And how are we treating biological waste? I believe we have lost focus, or at least we should recalibrate it. And I still believe we have to do a step forward to see what those raw materials are worth. That should be our focus. I don't think I will live to see any of our community be zero waste, but reuse we practice today as well. So recycling and composting, as well as circular processes, are something we should be tackling now, also at our national level. Thus, we could take those companies in Slovenia to the front that do this. So some processes, as you've mentioned, are present, and let us make those positive practices kind of a front runner in Slovenia. I think that is what we do need. Yes, I completely agree with you. We need more promotion, more awareness raising. I personally believe that there is a lack of vision for Slovenia. You probably know, Jože, that Slovenia would be a type of hub for circular economy as a center in Southeastern Europe where we would be in charge and be a type of driver in the area. But there is no more talk of this. And we have to be self-critical. We are an AGO with 6 employees who are in battles for the salaries, which are quite restricted. And then on the other hand, we hear how many funds NGOs bring in. And of course, there was information that we have gained 860,000 euro from governmental money from 2010. But we have to be aware that this portal for data, that projects are divided between different NGOs, but the sum there is full, not divided by 4. So it is quite difficult to navigate this. On the one hand, we are fighting to advance our cause at different workshops, team buildings, and bring some services, as I mentioned, as a type of a gray zone. But we don't have any program money. Time and again, we are being obstructed. So I do not dream that we'll be saving Slovenia. But at times, we could be the ones knocking on doors of governments and companies and bring them closer together. Our first circular economy conference in Brdo pri Kranju was organized by us. So there's this. So industrial symbiosis, circular economy, I absolutely believe in those concepts. But this is not only on the NGOs. Some companies look at us really degradingly, and I'm really talking about myself. So Slovenia should be readjusting its focus. We were closer, and our commissioner Potočnik is one of the founders of the circular economy idea. When we get to Brussels, everybody says, yeah, it's easy for you since you have Janez Potočnik. Well, he's not working for Slovenia anymore. There is a lot to be done. I wanted to show one more thing. Circular economy, it is a circle, but there are many eco-design options where we then hear that, yes, Greens, we want to bring humanity back to caves to be Neanderthals. But I have to say there is a new fight brewing in Europe, and reuse, warranties, right to repairs, and so on is now being enshrined in legislation. And we have lobbies trying to undermine these efforts. Thank you very much, Urša. All those topics can you find in our exhibition at the Museum of Recent History in Celje, at the House of European History in Brussels. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, that you've actually not heard a lot of new things, because we are repeating those time and again, and I hope this will be taken in practice. Thank you very much. Do keep following our project.
Bomo se še kaj čuli, a ne, gospod Jože?
Jože, we will stay in touch.